When God wants to make a man and prepare him for great influence, he often takes that man from humble beginnings through a process of trials, tests, and training. God tests a man so he can trust a man. Such was the journey of United States Congressman Kevin Hern, one whose name is circulated in the discussion for the third highest office in the nation, Speaker of the House. Come hear the journey and the most critical issues facing our nation: DOGE, cleaning out fraud, the global economic reset with tariffs, and free and fair election reform. City Elders hosts United States Congressman Kevin Hern.
So good to see everyone. Please have a seat, please. This never gets old coming talking this group, no matter where you are, and no matter, Jesse talked about the first time that I had opportunity to speak, there were like 5 or 6 people, and now it's grown. It's incredible to watch the growth of what you all have done of bringing cities and bringing business and bringing faith leaders together, because that's really what America's about. And I just want to thank you again for asking me to come and give me this opportunity, because I think there's no way to state just the importance of what you're doing. I know sometimes you do this and you have to ask for prayer, because sometimes you just wonder if you're getting through. You are getting through. But I just want to tell you also that this needs to go across the country. And I know Jesse and many of you all have worked this idea and keep moving across the country, and the growth that's going through is quite incredible. I was just thinking the last time I was here to tell you how important it is, because I know you never give up. But you've heard a lot about these crazy anti-MAGA, anti-American protests that you've seen on TV, where they've used those opportunities not to come get answers to questions, but to come protest so that TV stations will put them on air so they can be critical of Donald J. Trump and the work he's trying to do, as Pastor Jesse just said. And actually, the last time I was in this building on February 20th, in this room, was the first protest in America. And think about that, in Tulsa, Oklahoma. In fact, I had a colleague that was in Buffalo, New York, and they were playing it on all the news stations, that in Tulsa, Oklahoma, actually they said Glenpool, Oklahoma. Glenpool, Oklahoma, a protest broke out. And it was in this very building when it happened. And they co-opted a chamber meeting to attack President Trump and everything he was trying to do to get our fiscal house in order, to bring America back to where it was supposed to be as America first. And it was very shameful to see what happened. And they were yelling and screaming, and they didn't care about any answers. They came here for a purpose, was to embarrass our president. You see, I think the growth of what you all have done is because we need to see the organization stand up in the values you represent. We've especially seen, as Jesse mentioned, the Judeo-Christian values under attack time and time again. The last 4 years, as Jesse said, none of us could have ever imagined how far left this country could go so quickly. In spite of what we could do as Christians, as followers of Jesus Christ, as people who knew what America was about. And there were a lot of things complicit, a lot of people complicit in this, the media, social media accounts, and making that happen. And you think about it, the word tolerance. Tolerance is a very funny word. It's really misused today. Christians by nature are a very tolerant group of people. We are so because we live in this world. But as Scripture says, while we are to be in this world, we're not to be of this world. We tolerate the beliefs of others, but we do not and will not be forced to accept every belief that we see out there. And we see a lot. And we don't have to accept those. We know what's right and we know what's wrong, because we follow God, Jesus Christ. That's our true north, not something that's put on social media, not something that somebody has said. But if you look at the left, on the other hand, it's quite the opposite. When they say, aren't they just really intolerant? I mean, they say they're tolerant, but they're really intolerant because they don't want to know the truth, as I just described here just a few months ago in Tulsa, Oklahoma. And so what do you stand for? I never had a protester in my house until during Christmas this past year. And there were anti-Israeli protesters that marched up and down the street on Lewis in front of our house. And I was sitting in my office. It was over between Christmas and New Year's. And the police they heard about it and they were monitored. There was about 20 of them. And they were yelling with bullhorns. And the police called and said, "Do you want us to run them off?" And I said, "No." I said, "I don't." That's what America's about. It's to express your beliefs, no matter how wrong they are, but do it in the right way. And I said, I was pretty impressed. They were actually at a place, it was the right place. It was me as a member of the United States government, because they wanted America to side with killers, the Hamas people, instead of with our Jewish friends. Now, here's what I also told them. I said, if you could just tell the one girl out there with the bullhorn, she needs to turn that bullhorn away from the house because my 1-year-old granddaughter is asleep, and Tammy will come out there and hurt her if she wakes her up. That is a true story, by the way. And they did tell her that, and the lady started yelling across the street. So I guess she got it and she understood it was really a problem. When you look at what the left has done over the last 4-5 years, and this is what President Trump was fighting his last year in office in his first term. This idea that, when parents attend schools to help their children, they're classified as terrorists by their previous administration, if you remember that. Think about that. We've got some great school board members back here that have experienced a lot of change in the last few years, and we really appreciate all your hard work, but that's where it starts. So many of you remember when our cities and our churches dealt with the COVID outbreak that you were told you couldn't meet, you had to shut down. The cities had to shut down, and our kids lost literally, maybe possibly a generation of learning because they had to go home. And we saw it no greater a place in the country, perhaps, than what we saw here in Tulsa, Oklahoma. And we know all the atrocities that we've found with all the things that's happened since then. And, eventually things will happen. And Margaret Thatcher once said, and I believe this of America, America will do the right thing after they've exhausted all the bad things. And so we are back on track, and we're doing a lot better there. So I really appreciate, again, all your hard work, ladies, on what you're doing. When something that really bothers me the most, and I know it has to bother you all as well, is what happened with our women competing in sports, and the Biden administration allowing men to go in women's bathrooms, men to play in women's sports, and it's still happening. President Trump's working every single day. You saw what happened this week. A man competing in a woman's sport won every match on every different sport, still today. It is disgusting. And where are the women that fought so hard that women could be women in this country? You don't hear a word from those folks, not a single word. And again, I want to tell you why your fight is so important. We often look elsewhere to say, this is a problem of New York, this is a problem of California. Friends, it's a problem right here. One of our most conservative friends here in town, I was speaking to them. I won't tell you who she is, but she told me, she said, I go with my kids from time to time to LaFortune Park. And she said, I got to tell you something that really disgusts me. This is about a year ago now. There's a guy. Every time I'm there, there's a guy that goes in the restroom, the women's restroom at LaFortune Park. And I said, I bet we can find people to handle that. And I worked with some of our friends in the county and our friends in the state house, and there's now a law that he doesn't go in there anymore. Because I believe if you see something the first time, you got to do something. It's not just going to go away. That's why we have all of these dysfunctions that we're seeing across our country, is because nobody has wanted to do anything, had the courage to do anything, until Donald J. Trump got in the White House. You know, it is so fun being around him. I don't know if any of you all had the fortune to be around him. He is. My first 2 years was his last 2 years of his first term, and it was a stressful time. I mean, he had cabinet members that didn't want to help. He was trying to change America, and he was being met with resistance everywhere he went. 4 years off, and the hard work he did to push back on those who were trying to imprison him, now they're going to prison, all these judges. I tell you, the guy is cool as a cucumber, though. I was with him in Mar-a-Lago a couple of times. I was with him the day after at the White House, his first day in office, again, on January 21st. We were in the cabinet room. He was, loosey-goosey. He was having a great time, talking about all the things he was going to do. But probably one of the funniest stories I've got to tell you, because I know a lot of you all went to the National Prayer Breakfast, and you heard him speak there. Well, the funny story about that is for the first time, we had a prayer breakfast at the Capitol for members of Congress, because we had a lot of stuff going on. There were some national security things happening, so they wanted to keep members of Congress, House and Senate, in the statutory hall. So if you've ever been there, we were there. Then the president came in. He was so funny, and he was serious, and he was, it's probably the most sincere that I've ever heard him talk about his faith. And so then he leaves, and we go back to work. But at 11 o'clock, I went to the White House. There were about 7 of us went to the White House, and we were working on this big tax bill, and he wanted to meet with us. He was about 15 minutes late, and you know where he sits at the cabinet table, and I was sitting on his left, and Mike Johnson was sitting on his right, the Speaker of the House. And he comes in, he sits down, he goes, "Mike, I thought we were going to be united. Why didn't you have all the guys come over there? But it's okay. It was a beautiful speech. I did beautiful speeches everywhere. They were great, all great." He said, "Hey guys, I got to tell you something. I've got this thing figured out. 3 most important things in the world: God, religion, and tariffs. Tariffs are so important. But the press hates me when I say that, so now I've changed it. It's God, religion, reciprocal tariffs. What do you think? You like it?" That is a very true story. The guy is so comfortable with what he's doing right now. The guy is anointed. The guy is on the pathway. We don't always agree, but he is working hard for America. And what's driving the Democrats crazy? Joe Biden was on The View, whatever that is, and he still can't figure out why Donald Trump beat both him and Kamala Harris in the same year. And it's called getting more votes, that people like you better than they like both of you guys. And he got 77.3 million votes. That's what he did. And he won the Electoral College. So that has killed the Democrats. They have no message. Their only message is that we like illegal aliens. We like people, gang members who kill Americans better than we do Americans. That's the only message they have. The Democrats just can't get their mind around why he can do what he does, and he's got them chasing squirrels everywhere. And if you ever remember that squirrel moment, they get to follow him over here, and he sends them on a pathway over there. So it's really interesting to see what he's doing. But I tell you, we're in lockstep together. He is engaged like I've never seen before in my life. There's not a decision that goes on that he doesn't know about. And it's amazing how that guy can do that. And he turns 79 years old next month. And he is energy like you've never seen. And he is determined for America to get back on his path, the right path, before he's out of office. When you look at something that, I don't know how many of you all saw the State of the Union, or the joint address as it was called, when he came over to the White House, and the statement that he made, because he was on his pathway then to securing the southern border. And he said to the Democrats as he looked at them, he said, You guys said you needed new laws. As it turns out, all you needed was a new president. And all he has done time and time again is close the southern border. He has done what he said he would do. And if you look at it, I'm just going to quote you some of these so that you make sure you just put this in your head about what has happened. In March, the Border Patrol, so not some left-wing media, the Border Patrol encountered just 7,181 illegal immigrants at the southern border. 7,000 for the entire month of March. To put that in perspective for you, a year ago, December, it was over 300,000 in that month. 300,000 that month. Same month under Biden was a 95% decrease from 137,000 last year in March down to 7,100 this year. So when you look at that from 2023, it was 163,000. The guy has done nothing but just secure America, make America safer, as he said he would do. You hear a lot about tariffs. The president said, I'm tired of the Chinese creating these so-called precursors, sending them to Mexico to be formed into a pill and killing Americans. Hundreds of thousands of Americans. And I tell you, when I see what's happening with these judges across America, these liberal judges, that say the president can't use the Alien and Seditions Act from 1798 that was used because people were attacking us to send people out without due process. And these judges think that, the Tren de Aragua, MS-13, all these bad gangs that have come here by the millions over the last 4 years under Joe Biden. We have no idea how many are here. The president's getting them and take them out as fast as he can. But these judges said you can't take these people who are killing people, American citizens, like Lake and Riley. You can't take them out of the country. They're not citizens. They're bad people, really bad people. And these judges are doing everything they can to keep them here. Just today, you probably saw this up in New Jersey. The New Jersey Newark mayor was arrested because ICE was going into a prison to get MS-13 folks out. Known gang members from the Central America. You had 3 members of Congress, United States congressmen, 2 women and 1 man, trying to protect these MS-13 gang members. Let me give you an insight here. Friends, this is something that's wrong with our government. And this is what President Trump, Secretary Rubio are rooting out. I was in El Salvador 2 weeks ago. I went to CCOT, to that prison that you all have read about and saw. I was in there. Trust me, you don't want to go in there. You don't want to go in there. These are really, really bad people. Really bad people. But that night at dinner, Tammy was sitting on my left, and the chairman of Ways and Means was sitting next to her, and he was talking to the foreign minister across the table, and next to me was a lady that was the economics minister, and she's probably about 40 years old, and I said, we hear about how bad it is, as far as terror in our cities, but compare that with your country. She said, it's probably very similar. So we can't even let our kids go to school because they will send us pictures of our kids, these MS-13s and TDAs, this Tren de Aragua, and say, if you don't do what we want, we'll send your kid to you in pieces. She said, we wouldn't even go out at night down here. And so when we were down there, President Bukele, the president of El Salvador, was with President Trump. And that's when he said, we'll take all you have, all the bad people you have in the United States that you can send, we'll take them all. And they've got plenty of capacity. Sitting at the end of the table was one of our State Department guys. And we got to having a conversation about due process. And he was clearly a Democrat, and he clearly did not like President Trump. And I asked him, I said, did you know that President Obama released more people, or expedited deportation of more people than President Trump ever did, and nobody ever reported on it? And he paused for a minute, and he goes, well, yeah, I know that, but they did report. I said, nobody with a microphone or a camera did. He goes, fair enough. Did you know that in 2012, that Barack Obama deported 212,000 illegal aliens? None of them had due process. You didn't hear about that. How I found about it is I read that the ACLU, that ACLU, filed a suit against the Obama administration that said 75% of those folks didn't get due process, and they still deported them. President Trump did one, and the American people thought he was like most the evil person in the world. It's because the media is not on our side. It is not on our side. We have got to keep fighting every single day at the root of what's going on in America. You know, when I look at what's going on with the Mexican government, President Trump said, we're going to put 25% tariffs on you to secure the southern border. It's as much as what he did with those tariffs to get President Sheinbaum to secure our southern border and make America safer, as he said he would do. President Biden said he couldn't do anything about the southern border. Said he couldn't do anything. The Canadian border, same thing. Fentanyl come across there. President Trump put $9.9 billion in ICE when he came into office so they could go get the bad people out of this country. $9.9 billion. I spent more time, and which is what the instigation of the protesters here, talking about what the person that got myself into Congress, got Congressman McKean into Congress, Senator Tom Coburn, then House Tom Coburn, talking about waste, fraud, and abuse. We've talked about it for decades in America. $400, $500, $600 billion a year. On and on and on. And nobody's ever done anything about it. When you're in Congress, you have oversight. But the agencies, these unelected bureaucrats would never come and give you the information. It wasn't until President Trump came in and said, we're going to clean this mess up. And he's cut literally billions and billions of dollars, laid off thousands of people, tens of thousands of people, and I'm sure you really miss, you can see the federal government's not working for you, right? It feels bad, right? But here's the thing. As I said on many Fox News shows, News Nation, Newsmax, all the different ones, you know, all the different articles, I said, do you all know that I read a sentence the other day? It said there's a lot of waste in America and we're going to clean it up. And it was written by a vice president, except it wasn't Vice President Vance, it was Vice President Gore. And do you know that Bill Clinton laid off 433,000 government workers and there was no outrage? The government's still here. Friends, the problem is that Washington, D.C. is too big and the governments in our state and the people's voice in our states are too small. It's got to get bigger. President Trump wants the voices in our states to be bigger. That's why he's pushing back. That's why he's going to end the Department of Education as we know it in Washington, D.C. Because education needs to be run by our friends here in the state. You think about the challenges that's happened in D.C. Think about the challenges that Ryan Walters has had trying to reinstill education in our state and not stuff about DEI and all the different stuff you're seeing about wokeism. And these ladies back here are dealing with it are too big. Actually, we have the largest school district in the state here in Tulsa, and what they've been fighting here. We've got to get the education of our children back in play. And I think there's going to be a very important ruling that's going to help us see more about parents' choice in our religious schools come out in June by the Supreme Court. And we need some help there. We need them to be realizing what America needs to get back to. Jesse mentioned about fiscal responsibility and accountability. The silent killer, and people ask me all the time what keeps me up at night, is the underlying issue with the economics in this country. And I know it doesn't feel like it matters much, but I tell you, friends, you can't keep doing what we're doing in Washington, D.C. with spending money that we don't have, money that's not ours, and not being responsible for it. We're working on the largest tax bill in American history right now. And that tax bill, you won't be sending me a box of chocolates or anything, but if you do, I like the ones with the macadamia nuts in them. Or a little dark chocolate. Tammy says the milk chocolate's starting to make me fat. But the thing is, we're doing everything, and President Trump's doing everything to keep your tax rates where they are right now. Don't let them go up. And we're doing this process, and it's very convoluted, and I know you see this, and some of you have asked me about, you guys got a lot going on. We're doing a reconciliation package, and it was put in place back a number of years ago, and I'm going to tell you kind of the last 2 or 3 I'll tell you about the last 4. In 2010 or 9, somewhere right in there, Obama used it to get Obamacare. That's how he got it done. No Republicans supported that. Then you fast forward to 2017, Donald Trump used it to get our taxes cut so we could compete in the world. We had more money in our pocket. It was about a 20% tax cut across the board. 2021, Joe Biden used it to do the American Rescue Plan, which started the 20% inflation that you've seen over the last 4 years. Even Democrat economists were telling him, don't do that. He borrowed almost $2 trillion after the economy was already recovering under President Trump. And then the last thing he did was the Inflation Reduction Act, which is another $1.4 trillion. And that's why you have inflation. It's right at 21.3%. over the last 4 years. That's how much it increased. Versus the baseline inflation, and this is why why your eggs are high and your gas is high and all this stuff. And now we're trying to make sure that we can get this back under control. We're working closely with the President, House, Senate together to make this happen and do it by the 4th of July. And this is the crunch of everything that's going on. We hit our proverbial debt limit around the middle of July now, and so we've got to make sure that we don't have this crashing of interest rates and all the things that are happening. Very complex, making you guys go to sleep, I get it. But it's probably the most serious thing that's going to affect your kids and grandkids in the future if we don't get this done and we don't get it done right and we don't get it run right now. So we're going to work to continue moving that forward. I'm the only member of Congress that signed 4 balanced budgets in a row. I chair the Republican Study Committee, which is like 180 Republicans out of the 223 that we had. And one of the things it's always been known for the last 20 years was to put a balanced budget forward. And let me just tell you the enormity of the issue. 4 years ago when I did it as the budget chairman for Republican Study Committee, it was $13 trillion we had to cut in a 10-year window to balance. Some of you think we had to do these policies and everybody had to agree for 10 years. You can't agree anything for 10 minutes in Washington, so this was 10 years. The next year it was 14.4 trillion, the next year it was about 16.1, last year it was about 17.5 trillion. As you can see, as you would imagine in your households and in your cities and in your counties and in the state, it doesn't get easier if you just ignore it. And it's the only place in America that can abuse the American taxpayer dollars and get away with it. And I'm done with getting away with it. I said yesterday in Bloomberg, I had 7 reporters in my office at 7:30 yesterday morning. And I said, it's time for members of Congress to quit worried about getting reelected and start doing the right thing for America, not for themselves. And actually, I was kind of impressed because they actually printed that, and I didn't get any phone calls from my colleagues, but that's all right. But, as we continue to go forward, the tariffs, I know they feel painful in the moment, but what we're starting to get right now, and I'll be honest with you, when I told that little story about on the National Day of Prayer and President Trump saying about reciprocal tariffs, my guess is that there were probably 100% of us in that room didn't understand or didn't know that over 100 countries around the world had tariffs on our products coming to them. We didn't know that. And the president highlighted that. And now country by country by country, he's getting a fair deal for you. He's tired of America being put in last place. I'll say, one of the things that really troubles me a lot, and, he was ridiculed when he talked about Make America Great Again. If you remember, there's a nice hat back here somewhere. I don't know where that hat, right there with this Donald J. Don't lose that hat, man. It's got his signature on it. I didn't mean to say that, but it's got his signature on that hat back there. But, when he did that, if you remember, he got ridiculed for Make America Great statement. Great again. And so now they use the word MAGA as sort of a joke. And when I was asked about that, they said, Make America First. And they said, why would you do that? And I said, let me ask you a question. And I say this to the Democrats too. I said, if America's not first, what are we? Second? Third, fourth? I mean, where do we go? And the president has said time and time again, we are going to maintain our rightful place of leadership in the world. We're the only country that can do that. But we got to do it in a safe nation, in a secure nation. And safety and security are both for our personal safety and also for our economic safety and security. And he's going to make sure we have all that done. And he's working hard every day to do it. And people abroad, they understand the importance of America's military to go secure things like, the Suez Canal, the Red Sea, so we can get our products over here. And again, the president he inherited a mess that he did not leave Joe Biden. And the Democrats and Joe Biden were more worried about men becoming girls, men playing in women's sports, than they were about us as America. And it almost destroyed us. We can never let that happen again. And Donald J. Trump will never let that happen again. And I think if anybody ever thought that he wasn't strong or he wasn't sincere, all you had to do was watch when Zelensky was in the White House in the Oval Office. And I'll tell you a little inside secret on that. They had a meeting before the cameras came in there, and Zelensky was all on board about, we're going to do this, Mr. President, we're going to make this happen. And when the cameras came in there, he made the fatal mistake of trying to show up Donald Trump. It was not scripted. He did that on purpose to show Vladimir Putin and the rest of the world how strong he was. I think he walked out of there and he was apologizing within about 30 minutes. And now since then, they've cut a deal over there and we're working toward a solution and making that place safe again. People ask, so what's next? What's going to happen? What are we going to do? Where's this go? And I'll tell you, the president wants to, and you've seen him do this with the tariffs. He's shifting away from a lot of chaos and the corruption that's happened in this country, again, to the business positions of getting us back to free and fair trade, bringing the respect back to America that we need, working every single day to take America to a place where it should go. I like to quote the Wayne Gretzky quote, you can go where we are right now, or you can go to where the puck's going to go. President Trump is trying to take America to where it needs to be, and sometimes it's uncomfortable. And I've got a lot of business people that call me all the time from right here in the state, right here in the city, across the country, concerned. They say, this is the funny statement. They'll say, can he just not tell us what he's going to do so that way we can prepare it? I said, oh, so he's going to tell you and you're not going to, and the president of Japan or somebody like that's not going to know in about a week or 3 days or 30 minutes. So, no, you can't. You're just going to have to ride this out. Because what you need to know at the end of the day, this is about America. It's not about us as individuals. And that's important. I think it's important as I talk about the world, I talk about our country, we talk about the state, and we talk about locally. It's so important that our communities get strong again. And it takes great leadership from folks like yourself that come together on a Friday night here in Glenpool, Oklahoma, to listen to a guy talk about what's happening in Washington, D.C. But I want to bring it back to you here, because we're only as strong as this patchwork of America. The old story is all politics is local. I think, as many of you know, I'm a huge 10th Amendment guy. I think that we should do very little in Washington, D.C., and we should do a lot more at the states, in our communities. I think that's where it happens. That's the way the founders wanted this place to work. Sometimes it's a grind. You don't feel like you're getting any support. I can tell you right now, it's the way Josh McKean feels as well. We want, if we could, if it wasn't constitutional, we'd be perfectly happy with working ourselves out of a job. Because the real rubber meets the road here in the communities, where people can walk up to you and see what goes on. And the first thing I said after that meeting here on February 20th, I walked across the hall because we had all of our city leaders from around here, our county commissioners. And the first thing I said to them, and they said, hey, no, you don't have to apologize for us being late. I said, let me say something to you all. I said, what I just experienced is what you all experience every single day. It's people that walk up to you at the, Walgreens, people walk up to you at McDonald's, people walk up to you at City Hall, and they have a concern because you haven't fixed the pothole in their street. That's important to them. Or there's a drainage ditch that's stopped up, or the fire department's not working hard. That's where those decisions need to be made. It's easy to hide behind distance. It's easy to hide behind going to Washington, D.C. and saying, well, we'll come back once a year and talk. Friends, you guys are what make it happen. Our job is to get the government out of the way so you can do it. And it's hard to do that. I get it. You know, you look for scripture that puts you in a place to validate what you're doing, because you never want it to be about yourself. And many of you know when I was running the campaign, I said, I'm not going there for a paycheck or a job or a career. That's not what I'm going there for. I really want to go there to get government out of the way so businesses could create jobs and put Americans to work. I never lose any sleep any night, because that's what I work to do every single day. You know, the Apostle Paul said in 1 Timothy 3, he said what it looks like for leadership in the church. He said, the body of Christ, that those who want to lead the church should be first who rules his own house well. So we have to make sure that we're example here in Northeast Oklahoma, across Oklahoma, and Oklahoma across the country, as an example of what it means to have grassroots leaders, people that are doing the right thing, people that want to make sure that America is really America and on its pathway back to being what we all love and knew it was, is a safe and secure place to go, that we're not letting illegal people in to come kill our Americans, and that people that are victims of those killings know that we care about them. And that's what President Trump and his team is doing. We got to make sure we have leaders in our community that are doing that at the business level, at the pastoral level, and at the city levels. And that's what it's about if we're going to have America that we all are going to recognize and send on to our kids and grandkids. And that's so important. Thank you. Thank you all. Appreciate you. God bless you all.